Hello, Haunted Hearts Society members. It's me, Emily, SW.
Sam.
Today, we will be talking about a long-time guest, or a reoccurring guest of the society. Mm-hmm. Mr. Edgar Allan Poe.
Inevitably.
Yes, inevitably. We're not going to be talking about how he was a weirdo who was in love with his underage cousin or whatever, except for that I just mentioned it just now.
It is, you know what, you have to drag him for it at every available possibility.
Yes. And also, I will not hear anything about, it was acceptable at the time, whatever. Just because it was common does not mean it was right.
Now, actually, here's the thing. Because I was looking into it, some research to find out how actually of the time was it. And I found out a couple strange and interesting facts. Virginia's brother did not approve of the marriage. Virginia's birth date on the marriage certificate was falsified.
Ooh, not good. Not looking good.
So this was not a marriage supported by the family, and it sounds like even if it was legal, it was still weird.
Yeah, that's big weird energy. And
so
we cannot forget that he was a weirdo. He wrote some cool things. We have a lot to thank him for, literarily.
Yeah, that's the thing with Edgar Allan Poe, is his influence on the genre is too great to be discounted.
Yes. But I feel like that's why it's even more important that we bring it up every freaking time that he was a weirdo.
We'll never let him...
No, never forget.
I was going to say live it down. He's already dead.
He's already dead.
So he in no way profits from, and we all know he died fairly young.
Yes, under mysterious circumstances.
Mm-hmm. Like the people in the stories that we will be talking about today.
Yes. We are diving into not horror. I was trying to over-enunciate and it went too far. Not horror, not poetry. We are diving into Poe's detective stories.
Mm-hmm.
Because, despite the fact that he is not known for it widely, he is kind of the father of modern detective fiction.
Yeah.
His detective stories predate the use of the word detective, which I have a whole tangent about that, which we will get into.
Okay. We're going to start with, obviously, his probably most, well, I wasn't going to say, his most famous story would maybe be The Telltale Heart.
Yeah, or like Fall of the House of Usher, or The Pit and the Pendulum.
Oh, yeah, that's another really famous one.
Diddling.
Okay, that's not what it's actually called.
I have a copy of, it's just a compilation, Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher, and Other Tales. It's a Signet classic I picked up at a library book sale. And one of the stories in here is just called Diddling.
That's not the full title. Now, if you follow us on Instagram, you will remember that a few weeks ago I made a post about Thomas de Quincey and the influence that de Quincey had on Poe. So I have the complete works of Edgar Allan Poe, which includes How to Write a Blackwood article, which directly references the Confessions of an English Opium Eater, which was Thomas de Quincey's most famous work. Also, Diddling, because Diddling is a direct reference to another de Quincey work, and it was a satire called Murder Considered as One of the Fine Arts.
Okay.
The full title of Poe's also satirical essay is Diddling Considered as One of the Exact Sciences.
Okay.
So you see how the influence is unmistakable. Like, he copied the title and changed the subject.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was a very interesting post.
Yeah,
well, and follow us on Instagram if you want to see that kind of stuff.
And just in case you're curious, my copy has Considered as One of the Exact Sciences as a subtitle for Diddling.
Diddling.
So it wasn't completely cut out. It's just not in the table of contents.
It just makes it funny.
Yeah, it does.
But anyway, this, I think what we're talking about, it's a very, very famous story by Edgar Allan Poe, followed by two not as well-known stories by Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
And the first one would be, if you had solved... Now, the cipher last time was a bit different than what we usually do. So I'm curious if anyone actually solved it.
Yeah, let us know in the comments.
And I will reveal the answer. The answer to the cipher was Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Ooh, dun, dun, dun.
So, Murders in the Rue Morgue is considered one of the first detective stories. I don't know if
it is essentially, because I was reading about this too, which is how I went down the rabbit hole about the word detective.
Poe, I think it's the first detective story, but it's not the first full novel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Poe's stories are short stories. Yeah, okay, so this is the first detective story, but it predates the word detective.
Yes, so, sorry, I just went back into what I was reading about. There's some stories, like, from Voltaire and some Italian stories that have similar concepts of, like, the character is using smarts to do things and analyzing things. Now, the word detective, because as I was reading about this, I kept reading, Poe wrote the first detective fiction, like, the detective stories about, like, solving crimes as a detective. It even predates the word detective. And, of course, as a language nerd, I had to delve into that a little bit. So, now I went to the OxfordEnglishDictionary.com. They have a little article about the origin of the word detective. And I will not bore you with the entirety of it, but essentially, the word detective has existed in dictionaries for a long time, but not in the sense that we use it. The word detective was first used in relation to a crime, the murder of an Earl of Essex, in 1684, but it was used in this way: circumstances which the jury might have observed detective of in serving to discover the manner of my Lord Essex's death. That is, for the facts of the case as presented in court for the jury's consideration. And so then the first detective branch of the police was formed in London in 1842. So it kind of has a long history in the English language, but evolving. And
do we know what year the story was published?
Yes, it was 1841. But also while I was reading about this, so Louisa May Alcott did a parody of Dupin.
Yes.
In 1865, but it was published anonymously, but it is an Alcott story. And also, somebody who we have not read yet, but we will be reading later this year, referenced Dupin in a story, and I don't know if I put that in here, but if we're doing ciphers, I don't know if I want to give away the author of somebody we haven't read yet.
Yeah, okay, don't give it away.
Okay.
You're gonna have to figure it out for yourself.
Yeah, I'll bring it up later.
Drop some clues.
Yeah. Dupin is referenced many times.
Yeah, so Dupin is the main character of...
Oh, yeah.
Or he is the detective character. His name is C. August Dupin. And he is a Frenchman, and these all take place in Paris. And I say these all because there's actually 3 stories featuring Dupin. Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Mystery of Marie Roget, and The Purloined Letter. So we have read all 3 of these for your listening pleasure.
I think most people are familiar with the first one.
Yeah, we actually read it in my middle school, and when I was reading it again, I was like, how did a bunch of middle schoolers read this?
Yeah.
I wonder if we had some kind of like simplified version.
Oh, maybe.
Because I didn't remember it being that dense.
Well, yeah, and like I often find too, I usually when I think of Poe, and maybe this is because of like the Telltale Heart stories like that, I think of them as being sort of snappy, quick to get through because they're sort of suspenseful.
See, I remember also The Mask of the Red Death is another famous one. And we read that one in high school, and I remember that one also being like, I don't want to say hard to follow, but because it is just like description, and there's not really any action in it. For high schoolers, I think it was a little difficult to get through.
It plods a little bit.
Yeah. That's kind of how I felt reading these stories this time, and especially because we've been coming off of Poe poetry. But his prose is written quite differently, and I was also thinking about too, like the difference between his writing and like Arthur Conan Doyle's, because Sherlock Holmes stories are very easy to read.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Poe's writing is a bit denser.
And I also, because Poe wrote a lot of essays and stuff too, and I almost feel like his stories have some of that academic sort of sentence structure to them, where he's just trying to get so much information into them.
But there comes a point where your brain just like reaches capacity and stops retaining.
Yes, and then it's like, okay, let me just skip ahead. Are we still talking about the same thing? Okay, let me skip ahead some more. I get it. It was dark.
Alright. Well, Murders in the Rue Morgue is the most famous of the 3. And, I mean, you listener have probably read this or seen some adaptation of it. But the whole thing about the story is that it is an early detective story. It's also an early locked room mystery. And it's one where the format is it's actually Sherlock Holmes is also like, it's the same format. You have a narrator who's speaking in the first person, and their friend is this like super smart detective guy, and he's able to figure out the crime by reading a bunch of newspaper articles reporting on the details. And I was like, I know newspapers in the past like printed a lot more TMI information than they do now. I was like, would they really have printed like all of the interviews with all of the neighbors and everybody?
Because just think of it from a practical standpoint. Nobody wants to read that. They want to read the gory, juicy details. They don't want to read all the nitty gritty.
But that's how Dupin gets most of his information, is from newspapers. He's also acquainted with one of the prefects in the police force, and he's able to get permission to go to the crime scenes as well. So he's also actually physically looking at the evidence. And from all of this, he is able to deduce what happened.
Yes, he's very much into inference. He infers a lot.
Mm-hmm. When we read Sherlock Holmes, and I brought up in A Study in Scarlet, and Watson brings up Dupin.
Yeah.
And Sherlock calls him an inferior fellow. And I was reading these stories, and I was thinking, well, what Dupin does is very similar to what Holmes does. Where they look at the evidence, and they analyze it. Neither one of them are, like, they're not actually in the police force, so they're not, like, the most hands-on kind of detectives when it comes to solving these cases. Like, they'll go to the crime scene, and Holmes will stake things out. But he's usually by that point, already knows what has happened.
Well, and I think another major difference is that Dupin is not doing it for money. Like, Sherlock Holmes is like...
Yeah, he charges.
I'm a super smart guy. I can solve things. Give me money.
But the thing I think that... What he was getting at, very specifically, there's a scene where Dupin and his friend are walking, and Dupin says, oh, well, you were thinking about this at this time because of this, and this other thing. And I guess Sherlock kind of specifically puts that down because it's a lot of assumption. And it happens to be correct, but it is, like you said, inference and assumption, and he doesn't really have, like, the hard evidence that Holmes would be looking for. Like, I know, like, you walked here because you have dirt from this very specific place on your shoes, that kind of thing. So he's making a lot of assumptions, which very fortunately for him are usually correct. Yeah. So it's like they're very informed assumptions.
Luckily for Dupin, he's being written to be the smartest guy in the room.
Yes. So anyhow, you guys probably know the Rue Morgue. There was a murder where a woman and her daughter were discovered dead in their home.
Brutally murdered.
Yeah. And the daughter's body has been stuffed up the chimney.
And the mother was thrown out the window.
And one of the main key elements is the neighbors who went up to try to rescue them heard something talking, but none of them can agree on which language it was.
Which, right away. And I think our perspective as a modern reader is also a little different because we're a little more familiar with the animal kingdom, generally, I think, than somebody would have been in the 1840s.
I don't think someone in 1840s Paris would necessarily, or not even necessarily, would ever think that their neighbor's house had an orangutan in it.
No. And I mean, I would not think that now because orangutans, it's not really in their nature to do such things, but...
It's not something you'd typically find in Europe or North America.
No, not outside of a zoo. Well, and that's the whole thing. Because when you hear, they swear they heard somebody speaking, but they can't agree on what language it is, in my head, what kind of animals can imitate human speech? Parrots and various other types of birds.
Well, it wasn't a bird shoving bodies.
Yeah. So you're basically left with primate, monkey, something of that sort.
Mm-hmm. Something very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Something that can climb in and out of windows that are not on the first floor.
Yes, nimble.
And escape very quickly.
And be very aggressive. So,
one of the ways that Dupin confirms his theory is he puts an ad in the paper saying, let me see if I can find it exactly. Because I have another Holmes. Okay, so in the paper, he says, he handed me a paper and I read thus: caught in the Bois de Boulogne early in the morning of the murder. A very large tawny orangutan of the Bornese species. The owner, who is ascertained to be a sailor belonging to a Maltese vessel, may have the animal again upon identifying it satisfactorily, I'm skipping that word, and paying for a few charges arising from its capture and keeping. So that's how he kind of tricks the sailor who lost his orangutan to come into his apartment and confess everything. They also confront him with pistols.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's also a tactic that Sherlock uses in The Blue Carbuncle.
I don't remember that one.
So that one starts off with a guy. He gets into a bit of scuffle and he drops a goose.
Sounds like a euphemism.
It's not. It's a literal goose. And it's picked up, takes it home, and is like, well, it's a perfectly good goose. So his wife goes to cook it, and they find inside a huge blue jewel.
Okay.
So Sherlock Holmes is thinking, well, if the man who dropped the goose is not actually involved in, like, the smuggling scheme, he puts an article or an ad in the newspaper, and it says, goose, you lost it.
Yeah.
Come get it.
Lost and found. Yeah.
They get him a nice fresh goose, fortunately. He says if he is not involved in smuggling and he honestly just wanted to buy a goose, he'll come and tell us where it came from. That is what happened, and they were able to go to where the geese came from and figure out the line that led to this poor man accidentally getting a smuggled jewel.
I was trying to make a pun, and I can't. Like, I was like, oh, there's got to be some sort of expression with geese. But all I can come up with is what's good for the goose is good for the gander, what's good for the whatever the and that has nothing to do with it. I was trying to be funny. Nuts. I missed it.
Oh.
Well, and another thing that also strikes me about this is you could not catch somebody with a newspaper ad these days. Nobody reads the classifieds. Well, and you also have to wonder, is it a trope because it appeared in Poe's story? And then Doyle took it, and then people have run with it? Or...
I'm sure this was an influence on Doyle.
Yeah.
There's no way that it wasn't.
Well, and Doyle himself said he was influenced a lot by Poe.
Even though he called him his detective an inferior fellow.
Yes. Well, that wasn't Doyle, that was Sherlock Holmes.
Sure, Doyle's creation.
Yeah.
You definitely can't say that Sherlock Holmes embodies Doyle's beliefs because Arthur Conan Doyle was a believer in the supernatural.
Yeah, the opposite. Yeah. But yeah, we get a lot of detective tropes from Monsieur Dupin. And even just in terms of detective fiction, like you said, like having the narrator be somebody who is close to the super smart detective guy, but not the actual super smart detective guy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the newspaper article thing, and also the sort of way of solving crimes through analysis. That all stems from Dupin, which is also interesting to me, and I think there will be opportunities to get more into this, but the differences between the classic detective of these early detective stories, and also our modern detective, especially in TV shows, where we've moved away, at least in American detective fiction and TV and stuff, we've moved away from the super smart and analysis guy. And it's a little more, like, gritty, streetwise, like...
That'd be the noir influence.
Yeah. But I think there will be more opportunity to get into noir later.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely scheduled. We've
yes,
mostly been getting into the 19th century stuff, but the 20th century will
We are going to do some
about.
some time hopping.
Yeah, these things happen.
Yes, they do.
Can we move on to the second story?
Yes.
A sequel to The Murders in the Rue Morgue, The Mystery of Marie Roget, which is notable for being one of the first stories based on an actual murder.
Not a French murder.
No, it was an American murder. But Poe rewrote sort of a fictionalized version and set it in Paris and brought back Dupin for a sequel. In this story, I guess similar to the Rue Morgue, it starts off with Dupin and his friend learning about a murder. And in this case, the body of Marie Roget was fished out of the Seine after she had gone missing.
Sorry, just very quickly. The real murder happened to a cigar girl who worked in a tobacco shop. Her body was found floating in the Hudson River on July 28th, 1841 in Hoboken, New Jersey. It received national attention for weeks, and it was suspected to be murder. It wasn't solved, like, for real.
No, there was a solution presented, which basically the police rejected.
Yeah.
Now, the setup of the story is kind of similar, where Dupin gets most of his information from reading the newspaper reports. And then he goes into very long explanations about why it could or could not have been this, or it could or could not have been this other reason. He spends a lot of time talking about the circumstances in which a body will float or sink. in the river.
Yeah, it really... One time I tried to read Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton, and that book, I'm a nerd, but the deep dive into paleontology was just too much for me. I couldn't get through it. It was just a certain level of detail where I was just bored. I felt like I needed to be taking notes in a college class. And this kind of gave that a little bit.
Yeah, so I guess some of the similarities, like she's found in the river. Mm-hmm. Poe's version, she worked in a perfume shop, so she was the perfume girl.
Oh, not the cigar girl?
Yeah. Okay. She was engaged to, I guess, the perfume shop owner for a while, but then she left that, and then she had a different fiancé who committed suicide after she was found, which also happened in the real life case.
That did also.
People thought that it was gangs who had killed her, which is a point in the story. They figured out that the crime scene was like in this thicket, and her clothes were ripped and tied around her neck and her head and around her in various ways, which Dupin concludes is how the killer was able to drag her to the river.
Oh, yeah.
He concludes it can't have been a gang, because why would they need to do that if there's more than one guy? They could have just picked her up by her limbs and tossed her in.
It is a bit of there's a lot of assumptions still at work there, but I don't think Monsieur Dupin's theories would hold up in a court of law.
Probably not. Now, here's the interesting thing about this story, and I think it might have been because Poe was fictionalizing a murder which had not really happened that too long ago.
Yeah.
When he would have been writing this. So because the case itself was officially considered unsolved, even though there was someone who had presented to the police the story that, was it Mary Rogers?
Yes.
Mary Rogers had passed away during an abortion procedure. And the police rejected this idea.
Oh.
Now, and I think because this case is unsolved, I don't think that Poe wanted to solve the case.
No, I don't think so either.
So, because here's how it ends. Now, they talk about how in order to get her in the river, they must have, taken a little boat. And he says, if you find the boat shall guide us with a rapidity which will surprise even ourselves to him who employed it in the midnight of the fatal Sabbath. Corroboration will rise upon corroboration, and the murderer will be traced. So basically he's saying, find the boat, and you'll find the killer. But then the paragraph immediately after this says, for reasons which we shall not specify, but which to many readers will appear obvious, we have taken the liberty here of omitting, from the MSS placed in our hands, such portion as details the following up of the apparently slight clue obtained by Dupin. We feel it advisable only to state, in brief, that the result desired was brought to pass, and that the prefect fulfilled punctually, although with reluctance, the terms of his compact with the Chevalier. Mr. Poe's article concludes with the following words, and then just has the conclusion. So he doesn't tell us what the solution to the crime actually was.
No, which is a bit of a cop-out.
Yeah, it basically says, it's too graphic for you, dear reader, so you're just going to have to imagine that it ended the way that you want. I found that kind of funny.
Yeah, well, especially because, if you look at stories as catharsis, you're not really getting the full catharsis there, because you're not getting the satisfaction of a real ending. You have to kind of fill in the gaps, which can sometimes be effective. But I feel like if you're telling a detective story, that's not really the point, Yeah.
But again, I just think this is because he was writing about a real case and he didn't want to presume to have solved it.
Well, no, and I missed this in my list of detective tropes. Another trope we see in these stories are the police not being overly competent.
Yeah.
That is something that happens in
Monsieur Poe.
Mr. Poe.
He's French now.
Yeah. So that is definitely a trope that is carried through. I feel like that's also kind of a gothic trope of the people in power being not good.
Mm-hmm. It's not like they're bad. They're not as, good, smart, competent as the hero.
Yeah. Well, and I think we talked about this. Did we talk about this in the Sherlock Holmes episode about how with Jack the Ripper, people weren't really trusting the police to...
Oh, we talked about that because we were talking about Bram Stoker.
Oh, right. I knew we talked about it. I just couldn't remember when.
Well, if you're confused, and you don't follow us on Instagram, which you should do. Maybe like a month ago, I made a post about the influence of Jack the Ripper on detective fiction. And one of those things was, at the time the murders was happening at the Lyceum Theatre in London, they were showing a stage play of Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. People thought that, first of all, that the actor might have been the one responsible because of how he was able to change his face. And people thought, well, this guy keeps escaping, so clearly he's shifting himself in some way that he's unrecognizable. Obviously. Now, the production manager of the theater at the time was Bram Stoker. And because this kind of connection between the play and the murders was happening in people's minds, they had to cancel some of the performances. And people weren't staying for the full performance because they were trying to get out before it got dark, and it was a big mess. And also because a lot of faith was lost in the police force because the murders kept happening, the police, didn't actually finally, convict anybody.
No.
Bram Stoker was also... So Bram Stoker's original ideas for Dracula was actually modeled after Sherlock Holmes. There was going to be a detective and his friend, like police kind of character. But then because of the Jack the Ripper murders and his tangential involvement in the whole thing, he decided to take the official detectives out, and he reworked all the characters. So Dracula was almost a Sherlock Holmes fan fiction.
Everything is related. Yes. Everything is related.
Yes, and then it's really funny because then Sherlock Holmes takes on Jack the Ripper and many, many later stories.
Yeah. Separation is an illusion.
Yeah. Anyway, how do we get on that?
It's all fanfic.
How did we get on?
I was mentioning the trope of police being kind of bumbling and not very effective.
Now, the last story we're going to talk about, called The Purloined Letter, which is the third and final story featuring Dupin. And I would say that this is the one that makes the police out to be the most bumbling. Because basically, the premise of this story is Dupin and his friend are kind of sitting around, smoking cigars or whatever they do. And the police prefect comes in and he says, I need advice, and you're the only one who can give it to me because you're the only person smart enough.
Oh, help me!
So basically, a very important letter with very important political information has been stolen and is in the hands of this Minister D, whose name is not fully given to us, which is something Poe did a lot.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of a thing. It's just like a letter and then an M dash.
Yeah, and then a lot of times dates aren't completed. And I think a lot of times too they do it when they're referencing real people, but they don't want it to be slander. So they just put that
blurred out.
Let the audience fill in the blanks. Yeah.
Or they don't want it to be nailed down to an exact date.
Yeah, because the prefect of the place is Monsieur G. The minister is Minister D. I don't think he names the lady who had the letter stolen.
Well, isn't it? It's a queen. It's the queen, isn't it? Yeah, the theft from the queen's royal boudoir.
Anyhow, this minister steals it, and the police need to get it back. But they have searched the hotel where he lives, and they've searched everywhere. They've searched the rugs. They've searched the cushions. They've searched the bedposts. They searched the brickwork outside and have come up with nothing.
Of course. That's why they went to the smartest guy in the world. He's the best at hide and seek.
Who, of course, figures that the minister probably has the letter near him.
Yeah. If you're gonna steal something from the queen to blackmail her, you're probably not gonna leave that laying around.
No. Even the hotel is just the Hotel D. Minister D.
It's kind of like if you're writing a fantasy story or something, you just put in brackets, name here. It's like a placeholder. So,
see, what I find really interesting is that Dupin is able to just go up to the minister and just be like, hey, and the minister lets him into his house.
Yeah, that's the most unbelievable part.
And then, of course, Dupin, because he's the smartest, most amazingest person in the world, figures out where the letter is, makes a copy, and then goes back to the minister and she's like, hey.
Yeah.
And he swaps the letters by use of someone he hired to create a distraction.
The other preposterous thing about that, aside from just it being preposterous, if you're a criminal, if you're blackmailing the queen, you'd think you would be on your guard, right?
You'd think. Yeah, but this is aristocracy we're talking about.
That's true. That's the other thing, aristocracy. We didn't mention this, I don't think, but Dupin is he's got a title and he's got money and Isn't he from... What's his title?
Oh, isn't he a chevalier?
Yeah.
He's a knight.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, but Dupin swaps the letters. He has the prefect give him the reward money before he hands the letter over.
Which is interesting because in the first story, he's like, I'm not doing it for money.
And then I think this is also kind of, there is some humor in these. He says, it did not seem altogether right to leave the interior blank. That would have been insulting. D, at Vienna once, okay, so they were acquainted, did me an evil turn, which I told him quite good-humoredly that I should remember. So, as I knew he would feel some curiosity in regard to the identity of the person who had outwitted him, I thought it a pity not to give him a clue. He is well acquainted with my MS, and I just copied into the middle of the blank sheet with the words. And then it's not in English, and I don't know what most of them are.
If such a sinister design is not worthy of Atreus, it is worthy of Thyestes?
Poe was really fond of using references to classic Greece.
Yeah.
And kind of obscure ones, too.
Okay, so it's a quotation from Prosper Joliot de Crébillon's play, Atre, Thyeste.
Yeah, it says that at the end here. It says they are to be found
okay.
in Crébillon's Atre.
See, this is hard because it's like a French play about Greek people, so I'm like, do I say it French or do I say it Greek?
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny.
Yes. See, but the other thing one of the things I appreciate about Poe is that when he's doing the Greek references, I almost always have to look them up. Like, he doesn't go for the common ones.
Yeah.
He goes for the really obscure ones, which I just enjoy looking things up, so I find that interesting. Yeah, he's a little sassy, but he's like I feel like Sherlock Holmes is an asshole, but in kind of a charming way. Dupin is an asshole, and he doesn't quite hit the charm mark, I don't think.
I don't think we really spend enough time with him. And most of the story is just him
being
read a newspaper article by his friend, and then he analyzes it.
Yeah, there's a lot of descriptions of, that's true. Maybe that's why he doesn't come off as charming.
So yeah, I thought it would be fun to read all three of them, because usually the only one that gets talked about is the murders in the Rue Morgue, which we talked very little about.
Yeah.
But I think it's so famous that most people are familiar with it.
Yeah, plus I think really the fact that so many of our tropes come from this story. And we also get a lot from Doyle too, but Doyle took so much from Poe that's the first detective fiction predating the use of the word detective as it relates to crime.
Yeah, that's all I got.
And that's also all I have. Stay tuned next week for another murder. No, I actually don't remember what we're reading next week. Maybe I should do the cipher. We've got some exciting things coming up.
Yeah.
Some new guests to the society table. Mm-hmm. Some old returning guests to the society table.
Mm-hmm.
I'm excited about this year. I think we've got a good variety. I've been enjoying what we've been reading, so hopefully you are also enjoying, audience. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Tumblr, Substack, TikTok, all the podcast places.
Yeah, give us a like.
Comment, let us know what you think of Poe's detective stories versus his horror and poetry. Yeah, we will see you next time. Keep an eye out for the cipher, too.
That's right.
Yep.
Not cipher part 2.
No. Cipher, comma, TOO. Too cool for school. Alright, anyway. Goodbye.